Hey everyone, what's up? How's it going? This is Finite MTG, and we are bringing you the old-fashioned intro today because this time, this is not a draft that I did on stream. This is one of the very few MH2 drafts I was able to do before they took the league off. It was only on the Magic Online client for about a day this time before they realized that putting it up at the same time as Vintage Cube was perhaps interfering with the activity in the MH2 league, which was very unfortunate. And then they took it down and promised that it'll be back up again soon, but we'll see. I'll just say I'm not holding my breath. So without further ado, let's jump into this draft. This was the first one I did of the season, and a very sweet one at that. Powerful rare for me in this pack in Master of Death. This is sort of a squee variant, but you do get some value from it when it enters the battlefield as well. And as a 3/1 for 3, the body is significantly more relevant than squee. But for me, I just started things off here with a Timeless Witness. This only puts me in one color, and similar to the Master of Death, there's also a lot of value attached to this thing. But I think this card is just a little bit more impactful as the game goes on, potentially. Maybe that's not correct. Maybe Master of Death is the pick that you're supposed to make there, but Timeless Witness is what I went with. All right, next up. So you want to be able to cast your Timeless Witnesses early if possible, not super frequently that you would want to cast them turn 3, but if nothing else, you want to be able to reach 7 mana to go ahead and eternalize them. And what better way to do that than by picking up an Ornithopter of Paradise? Cards like this are pretty frequently going to be a high pick in this kind of format. This card's just really nice. You can randomly block some 1/1s and that kind of thing with it. Sometimes you're going to put a bunch of modular counters on this thing and crack in and kill your opponent, but regardless, it's always going to be able to fix your colors. It's always going to be able to ramp you. And it's just a 2-drop, which is always a highly desirable slot in the curve. So pretty easy Ornithopter for me here in an otherwise pretty unexciting pack. Though it is worth noting that Tragic Fall, Terminal Agony, Scophos Reaver looks like there are the makings of potentially some kind of Rakdos Madness deck just from this pack. All right, next up, pack 1, pick 3. Another copy of Tragic Fall. That is a card I like, but at this point, I'm really prioritizing staying open. Right, I started the draft off with a monocolored card as opposed to a 2-color card. And then we took a colorless card, and now we get to follow things up with another colorless card in the Nevinyrral's Disc. This one is pretty powerful, a little bit on the slow side because it does enter tapped, but the ways, like the play patterns with this card are really fun and interesting if you're the one who controls it, at least, because you can set things up to kind of prevent your opponent from adding to the board by playing this and sort of having the threat of activation. And you can plan on popping it in that kind of scenario, or you can play this and actually just almost use it as like a tempo kind of thing to sort of scare your opponent into not adding to the board, and then that'll give you a chance to catch up without even activating it. So some kind of fun and interesting options with the disc here. All right, pack 1, pick 4. Now, I'm not an expert on this set, but I do like watching a lot of Magic content, and one of the people who I turn to pretty frequently is Opa, who is a very prolific and skilled Magic player. He's delving more into Constructed these days. He's also just a good friend of mine in real life, which you don't always get to say about people you know online. And he has had a lot of success in this format with Blue-Red, and he's not the only one. The Ham TV famously got to over 2100 limited rating, which for him it was his rating, that is, was the highest limited rating of all time. He got there with Grixis in MH2. And so there's a common theme there between the Ham and Opa of Blue-Red cards being very powerful. And of course, Storm God's Oracle is more or less the crux of that kind of thing. Sure, you have the Prophetic Titans and that kind of thing as well, which are very strong, but at uncommon, it's a lot harder to pick those up. And Storm God's Oracle technically a card that you'd probably be willing to play more of than the Prophetic Titan because it is a 3-drop. So now my plan with the Timeless Witness and the Ornithopter is to potentially end up in some kind of teamer deck or just see where things take me. But Storm God's Oracle is an exciting one to get here 4th, and if at all possible, it will end up in my deck. All right, next up, pack 1, pick 5. So I don't love too many of the cards in this pack, but I'm now starting to worry a little bit about my color mana constraints, and there's a Tangle Pool bridge that could help me out with the color fixing situation, but it feels like bridges are relatively easy to get. People aren't taking them super highly, especially like green blue, which doesn't really fit into the sort of red white artifact archetype. Whereas Rift Sower as kind of an alternative or supplemental Ornithopter of Paradise is going to be a nice pickup for us. It's going to do the same things pretty much as the Ornithopter in that it fixes us, it ramps us. You can argue that it's a bit worse than the Ornithopter because it does require colored mana, but you can suspend this on turn 1, so it can be less of a mana commitment, and it does block potentially a little bit better with 3 toughness as well. It survives a little bit more in terms of removal. So yeah, picking up the Rift Sower now to see if the Teamer Dream is possible. Though note that we're not really seeing too many powerful green cards. We saw the Timeless Witness, and that's kind of been it in terms of the exciting green cards here. All right, next up, pack 1, pick 6. Yeah, well, this is kind of supporting my theory that bridges tend to go around, and important spells can be high priority pickups, because the spells in this pack, it's not like they're all unplayable Drek or anything, but they're just not particularly interesting or exciting for what I'm trying to do. And so now it's time for me to pick up a Slagwoods Bridge in order to further kind of support those powerful early picks, the Witness and the Storm God's Oracle, see if we can make it all work. Pack 1, pick 7, kind of an interesting one. Maybe not one that I would make if I didn't have any experience in this format. And by that I mean it might be a little bit unintuitive. But here I actually took a Gargadon. It felt to me like there's a decent chance that red specifically might be open. And Gargadon is a funny card. You can certainly cast it for 7 mana, right? That is part of what the card does. But suspending this thing on turn 2 can be very powerful. Just having the threat of a 7/5 haste trample creature looming over your opponent, yes, it does come in with haste thanks to suspend, can be quite threatening and really does hit super hard or demand an answer just about immediately. And so I don't mind at all taking a Gargadon here, and this is back from my MH2 sealed days where that was my main way of engaging with this format, and I remember the Gargadon being powerful there. All right, next up, pack 1, pick 8. This is kind of a weird one. It sort of calls back to that earlier pack, and you can actually see some cards from it there at the bottom of the screen, where I was thinking, okay, well, depending on how open red is in particular, I might be able to move into maybe like a red-black madness kind of shell, and then maybe I have Storm God's Oracle as a splash, so I end up some kind of Grixis deck, or potentially even just straight up Rakdos. But regardless, I am a fan of Loathsome Curator. I don't mind a Manticore one bit either, but Scophos Reaver is kind of the higher priority pickup for me there. It's just lower on the curve. Having Madness is clearly important for the Madness deck too, and it also hits pretty hard, so don't mind a speculative Scophos Reaver there. All right, next up, yeah, you already saw this pack probably from how I scrolled down. And speaking of that pack with, or maybe we're not there yet, but regardless, we're on one of the first packs that's wheeling here. And there's a Terminal Agony, which does kind of fit into that Rakdos or Grixis shell, either one that I was describing. And it is a nice removal spell. There's not too much in this pack that's really exciting. Soul of Migration in the right deck can work, but for the most part, I'm not a huge fan of any of these cards, so Terminal Agony it is. And here comes that pack that I believe was kind of heavy on the Rakdos cards, and it'll be time for us to pick up a second Scophos Reaver. So at this point, we're in a bit of a weird spot. We took the bridge and we took the Rift Sower to try to support the Teamer plan, but we're not actually seeing almost any green or almost any blue in terms of cards that are exciting for us. So it seems like, yeah, maybe Rakdos is going to be the direction we go here, or Grixis. And then pack 1, pick 11. Here we just get another Tangle Pool Bridge. Not too interested in the spells, and again, we still have outs to play the Teamer deck. Pack 1, pick 12. We get a pretty late Mount Velas Manticore. I'm not a big fan of any of the other cards in the pack, but I really don't mind the Manticore. Sometimes you'll have a card with 2 types, so discarding it can deal 2 damage to something, but regardless, you can always discard a card to deal at least 1 damage, which makes it a nice Madness outlet. It doesn't require mana to use, and it's got multiple types for Delirium if you're into that kind of thing. And pack 1, pick 13, another Manticore is in the pack. I definitely could have snapped it off, but at this point I'm thinking that Manticore seems like a card that's going to go really late, so this probably won't be my last chance to pick one up, even to pick one up late. So instead I decide to go with a Crack Open here. Note that Crack Open can destroy Manticore and other such permanents. And I'm still thinking like, yeah, maybe Teamer's on the table. It's not like I'm locked to be Rakdos or something like that here. And then pack 1, pick 14, we get a Floodhound, and pack 1, pick 15, a Step Through. All right, moving on to pack 2. So we get a powerful mythic in this one, Svelun, maybe, of Sea and Sky. This 3-mana 3/4 that cantrips when it attacks, or draws a card, really. And some other kind of conditional text that depends on you controlling other merfolk. Not the easiest thing to do in this format. This is definitely a constructed plant. Surprise, this is a Modern Horizons set after all. But with or without the merfolk text, this is a very powerful card, a strong reason to end up in blue. But note that at this point we really just have that Storm God's Oracle. And this is not just a nice single pipped blue card. Like, this is a pretty heavy commitment to blue with 2 blue pips. So deciding that I'm not totally sure where I'm going to end up just yet, and I'd be surprised if you watching knew where I was going to end up either. Instead, I opt for the Batterbone, just the more flexible card. Once again, a colorless 2-drop that keeps me open, and can be pretty powerful as well. You don't want to be spending 5 mana on the equip necessarily too many times, but once or twice, if you end up in a long grindy game, can maybe get the job done. And it's just a pretty nice one. All right, next up, pack 2, pick 2, more blue rares. This time a Thought Monitor is in the pack. And while Thought Monitor is nice, we don't actually have that many non-land artifacts, because we do have some bridges already. But this card is mainly trying to fit into like blue-white, that kind of deck, which is a little bit more artifact-centric. Whereas in terms of fitting into like blue-red, blue-green, yeah, I suppose you can have some artifact tokens for the Thought Monitor, but that's not really how the card is intended to work. On the other hand, there is another copy of Storm God's Oracle, and it feels a little bit funny maybe to pick this up after passing a powerful blue mythic and now a good blue rare as well. But here we are in this spot where Storm God's Oracle does look pretty doable with the mana base that we've created so far, and it is just quite a powerful card. So that was my selection there. All right, and next up, pack 2, pick 3. So here's an interesting one. We have a couple green mana dorks, the Sanctum Weaver and the Rift Sower, but at this point we are really, really lacking any kind of strong incentive to end up in green. Like, sure, we have the Timeless Witness, but that's pretty much the only good green card we've seen, or exciting green card maybe, going around for all of the first pack and even the first few picks of the second one. So Here I end up deciding to go just with the cheapest slash most efficient card that would fit in a red deck. And no, I'm not talking about the one that can be cast for 0 mana. I'm talking about Unholy Heat, the one you actually don't mind casting on the first couple turns of the game. Unholy Heat can be pretty difficult to pick up, and it is a pretty nice card. Even if you're not able to get Delirium, just being able to play a 1 mana thing and answer a cheap creature from the opponent, most likely you're not hitting a Planeswalker, it can be pretty good. And Mind Collapse is a card that tends to go later. We might be able to get another copy, we'll see. Pretty unlikely that we would, for instance, wheel the Unholy Heat. All right, next up, pack 2, pick 4. Another not super exciting pack. Scour the Desert can be fun, but super off plan. We haven't really looked at a white card once in this draft. Mount Velis Manticore, we already kind of demonstrated that is one that will go very late and don't necessarily need to pick it up now. Ornithopter of Paradise, on the other hand, this is a more desirable one, and here I'm having maybe a little buyer's remorse or something after passing the Rift Sower and the Sanctum Weaver. So now I'm thinking, maybe the Ornithopter will help me kind of get back on track with the fixing, the ramping. Even if we don't end up playing green, it could still be useful. All right, pack 2, pick 5. Here is a pretty interesting reason to turn blue into a main color, and it does work nicely with the Ornithopters and Bridges as well, and that's Sweep the Skies. So a nice card that's always going to make minimum 1 Thopter. Like if you cast this for double blue, it makes 1 Thopter, but then just adding like one other color, like a secondary color on there, will give you a 2nd Thopter. And then ideally, you're able to have more than 2 colors for this thing, produce 3+ Thopters with it. If you're making 5 Thopters or something like that, you're probably in a really good position, or you're chumping with all of them, and that would be pretty unfortunate, but I do like Sweep the Skies, and I think it can be pretty good. All right, pack 2, pick 6. This is really going to solidify which colors I'm playing here as the main colors as we get past, sure, a Scalding Tarn, but this is a Phantom draft on MH2. I'm not exactly taking this for a whole lot of tickets or anything, but we get a Usuri, which is a very powerful blue-red card. Pretty much the idea with this card is, sure, it's a 3-mana 2/3 flyer, but really the exciting part is that attack trigger. Being able to draw a bunch of cards when it attacks, regardless of how much damage you take, is quite appealing. And you do want to be a little bit careful with how many coins you choose to flip with Usuri, but if it's in the early game and you're not playing against an aggressive deck, or you haven't taken any damage or something like that, you can frequently flip 5 coins with impunity. And yeah, Usuri is just a really exciting one. Definitely going to put me into blue-red now. Maybe wishing that I had this Phelan a little bit, but we can only think about that so much. It's not going to change the outcome of not having picked it. All right. So next up here is a very unexciting pack. I almost forgot what I took from it even, but I think we ended up going with an Arcbound Slasher. This card is just reasonable on rate, pretty similar to Rampaging Rendhorn for those of you who might remember that card from Ravnica Allegiance. Yeah, again, not the most exciting 5-drop in the world, but sometimes you just need a 5, and the other cards in the pack are just not particularly good. All right, next up, pack 2, pick 8. There's not a whole lot going on in this one, so I believe here I just decided, maybe another Slagwoods Bridge could matter. Maybe the green cards that we haven't seen so far will show up in pack 3, and if not, I'm not really passing anything here anyway. Pack 2, pick 9. This is kind of an interesting one. We decided to go off course a little bit with this pick because we've been thinking about ending up Teamer, and then recently decided that, yeah, okay, it looks like blue-red is actually just more likely, like potentially straight up blue-red. But we do get a Prismatic Ending coming around in this pack, and given that this would be on the splash in a blue-red deck, we're looking at pretty much always being able to cast this for 3 total colors if it makes our deck. And I believe we saw some Boros removal spells going around as well that could wheel and could lend themselves to like a Jeskai build of this deck instead of Teamer. All right, next up, pack 2, pick 10. This pick kind of just reflects like my disdain for the pack. I'm not sure that this choice made a heck of a lot of sense, but I took Flourishing Strike here. This card can be pretty nice. It's a little bit tricky to get the 2-for-1, but the flexibility can be good. And yeah, once again, I just am not a fan of the other options in this pack. Okay, here's kind of a big one for us. Pack 2, pick 11. We managed to wheel that Mind Collapse. A little bit of foreshadowing from me there earlier about this. And yeah, so I believe we got Unholy Heat out of this pack the first time, and now the second time we get Mind Collapse. So we're doing much better in the removal department than we were, which is nice. Pack 2, pick 12. I think here I just took a Lightning Spear. Not a card that I'm super excited about playing, but sometimes you'll want it for the trample in like the modular decks, that kind of thing. But apart from that, not terribly interesting for us. In pack 2, pick 13, we already have one crack open, we already have one Rift Sower, and we're looking at dropping green finally. Probably long overdue. So instead it's time for me to pick up a Lose Focus, just another thing to do early on if we're light on action, but also can be relevant late thanks to Replicate. Yeah, just a pretty reasonable counter effect. And pack 2, pick 12, we actually do wheel one of those Boros removal spells that I was referring to, Foundry Helix. So we do have outs to play Jeskai now with that Prismatic Ending. And pack 2, pick 15, a Shattered Ego, a card that I used to put in some of my decks in MH2, and I have since quit that habit, which I would recommend doing the same for you all. It's just not a card you want to run unless you absolutely have to. Okay, pack 3, pick 1. One of those moments where I really wish this wasn't a Phantom draft because Endurance is in the pack. I don't know if the card is actually worth a lot on Magic Online, but I know it sure as heck used to be. For us, though, there's very little in the pack. We've seen almost all these cards already, and in a number of cases, we've already drafted them. But there is a Monoscallion in the pack, and this is another 2-drop. One of the concerns I'm having at this point with the Ornithopters is while they are still colorless, they don't have to, go into like a greedy 3+ color deck. They are a little bit less like on theme or on plan if we're trying to attack and block in the early game and kind of refraining from casting splashy or expensive spells. So Monoscallion can be a nice 2-drop that fits what this deck is trying to do a little bit better. Next up, pack 3, pick 2. This time we do get to treat the pack as if it's a non-Phantom draft and we are able to keep the cards and just pick up the Scalding Tarn, which is nice. There was one in the pack with Usuri as well, but we actually have 0 blue-red bridges yet for all the bridge drafting we've done. I'm not even sure we've seen a blue-red bridge in this draft, so we do get one duel at least, which is Scalding Tarn, enters untapped, which is nice, and again, sometimes if you end up with cards that care about Delirium, Scalding Tarn can be nice there as well. All right, pack 3, pick 3. Not too many exciting cards for us. There is Ren's Run Hydra, which is a card I like, and there's Combine Chrysalis, which is pretty particular. Like it just wants to go in the blue-green token archetype, but it is a powerful card there. So instead for us, we're going to take a Mind Collapse. You can't always get them 11th pick or what have you. Sometimes you have to pick them 3rd. But still a good card, not one I'm unhappy to acquire by any means. All right, pack 3, pick 4. Yeah, so this is another fairly blank looking pack for me. There is an Ethereum Spinner, but I was just talking about not actually having too many expensive or splashy cards, so I believe this isn't looking to make too many Thopters at the moment. Whereas I am still a fan of Gargadon. We have the one that I picked pretty highly before, and I don't mind picking another somewhat highly here either. Yeah, it's just, again, a really powerful thing to be doing, and we'll see how the Gargadons work out for me. All right, pack 3, pick 5. Yeah, there's not a lot going on here. We already have 2 Ornithopters, and we're not even sure if we're going to play them. What we have picked up since then, though, since the Ornithopters, is some white removal, right? We have the Prismatic Ending and we have the Foundry Helix. So I decided it's time to pick up a Razortide Bridge, which could be a nice one if we end up deciding to go with the White Splash, which would make a lot more sense than trying to play Teamer at this point. And pack 3, pick 6, we actually just get to snap up another Monoscallion here, pretty much taking it for the same reasons as the one before. Not too interested in an Aeromoeba or Burdened Aerialist, or a Gouged Zealot for that matter. And here, pack 3, pick 7, I believe we get to take yet another Mind Collapse. Is there such thing as too many Mind Collapses? Yeah, there probably are if you're sacking all your lands or something like that, but it is important to have removal. We've kind of established that blue doesn't really have good removal, and we only have the one Unholy Heat, so multiple copies of Mind Collapse it is, and it's going to be quite a bit better too than the equipment that you can kind of turn into an open fire. All right, pack 3, pick 8. So we do have some Scophos Reavers that we've seen along the way, even though we're not really a Madness deck, and that means that maybe Faithless Salvaging will be cool for us. Could have some nice upside there, and if nothing else, it's just a reasonable card for filtering purposes, just smoothing out our draw and that kind of thing. Not a card I'm opposed to by any means. Can be a little bit clunky because the rebound happens before your draw step. Ideally, you would draw your card for turn before this thing rebounded, but yeah, not a card that I dislike at all. Okay, next up, pack 3, pick 9. The time has finally come. It is time to take Mount Velis Manticore number 2. We have passed a bunch of Manticores, it feels like, between this and taking the first one, but we want to lock in now. We know we're playing blue-red. The only question is whether we're going to end up splashing white. All right, pack 3, pick 10. We get a bit of a gift here with Scophos Reaver number 3, I believe. And yeah, works nicely with the Manticores, which are discard outlets. We just picked up the Salvaging as well, which works with the Scophos Reavers, and it's just a powerful 3-drop in terms of the stats. Pack 3, pick 11. There's not a whole lot going on here. I don't really value sideboard Gorilla Shaman at all, so instead I'm just going to take a mere Scrappling in case there's some world where that ends up mattering for us. Pack 3, pick 12. I believe I just made the same pick here. Sometimes I'd be tempted to maybe like hate draft one of these black cards, but I decided that didn't really feel like it this time. And here we do make a sideboard pick just with the Mog Salvage here. It seems like it's going to be a little more active than that Gorilla Shaman. The Gorilla Shaman feels like there are too many things that it just can't hit, or if it can hit them, it requires way too much mana. And here we actually get a bit of a gift as well, a Gouged Zealot. Not a card that I have a lot of experience playing with, but along the way we've gotten some cards that can work for us for Delirium, and the attack trigger can be good, depending on the matchup with the Zealot. And last but not least, well, actually it is kind of least with this one, a Caprichrome to round out the draft. Okay, so now on to the deck, how we ended up building it. So we do end up with triple Scophos Reaver and triple Mind Collapse, double Gargadon, double Storm God's Oracle, double Monoscallion, and double Mount Velis Manticore. And yeah, just ended up with straight blue-red, no Silver Bluff bridges, unfortunately, but we do have the one Scalding Tarn. Looks like a pretty good deck. And yeah, let's take it for a spin and see how it performed. All right, so on to game 1 of round 1 here. Looks like I mulligan on the play, and I'm able to keep this hand, which has Batterbone, Lose Focus, and Usri, which I'm excited about. So we resolve the Batterbone. It's not worth it to me to hold up Lose Focus at this point in the game. And No Guts, No Glory, we have to jam the Usri into the opponent's open mana, even though they could easily have Lose Focus of their own. Fortunately, they don't. Instead, they play Sveilun, which apparently, like most likely, we pass to them. Maybe some other people pass to them as well. But it's now time to just Mind Collapse that thing. I had to read it a couple times. It's like, okay, this doesn't have Ward 1, right? And it's like, no. Okay, it doesn't have an Indestructible either. No. So you can Mind Collapse it, which is what we do. And then we're at 21 life. It's time to flip 5 coins. So let's pop out the game log to see how many of these flips we win. And we flipped 4 heads and a tails after calling heads. So we take 2 damage, barely below 20 life, and we've drawn 4 cards. So yeah, the opponent is just in a world of hurt kind of no matter what happens now, thanks to the Usuri. They play Wonder, which does prevent the Germ from attacking and can maybe be a little bit annoying later. Looks like we decide to haste in an Arcbound Slasher, and I think, yeah, this time I just flipped 2. I'm at a point where if I take a bunch of excess damage, then maybe somehow the game can slip away from me. And I figure, you know, even if I flip a bunch of coins and they land the right way, I can just end up discarding the hand size. Not that discarding the hand size is worse than not drawing the cards in this kind of spot. Like, they're effectively extra loots that you get, but seems like a good time to just minimize risk. Opponent has Chrome Career and Hard Evidence. And we're still just interested in trying to kill them as quickly as possible. I think here, looks like I go for, yeah, Mount Velis Manticore. Probably discard a card and shoot down the Chrome Career because otherwise they have a double block on the Usuri. Yeah, we discard the Nevinyrral's Disc, which makes sense because we're very far ahead, which means that it's quite unlikely that we would want to Wrath. Looks like we win 1 flip, lose 1 flip, which I think is what happened before. And I think, yeah, I suspend a Gargadon here, which doesn't really matter very much, but, you know, why not? I'm not casting it anytime soon is the big thing. And then here, I think I just Mind Collapse this thing again, this Faelun again. I guess I play a Scophos Reaver first. I'm not really sure why I did that. Oh, it's because I wanted to, sure, spend the mana prior to using the alternate casting cost on the Mind Collapse. And then now I think I maybe just discard a Storm God's Oracle to shoot the Wonder because that, yeah, has 2 types. And we're holding up Lose Focus with 1 replicate cost. So it looks like I did stuff correctly this game. And I think the opponent goes to like 1 life here or something. Yep. And then we're holding up Hardcast Mind Collapse and Lose Focus for 2, and they don't have a food anymore. And yeah, we're just in this pretty ridiculous spot where like even if even if they somehow like blew up everything or upheavaled us or whatever, like we still have a suspended Gargadon, a counterspell removal. Like it's really hard to imagine things going too poorly for us. So a very nice and smooth game 1. Now on to game 2 against the same opponents. All right, so we have this hand, which I hope I mulliganed. Looks like I did, good. And we get rid of a Gouged Zealot, sure. And we do have a couple Scophos Reavers, but it seems like a lot of this hand is kind of going to operate on the strength of Nevinyrral's Disc. And the opponent has something terrifying, which is turn 2 Urza's Saga into Ornithopter, right? Normally Urza's Saga, I mean, you can play it on turn 2, but like, the opponent is doing something really, really powerful here because this can kind of set you back on mana a little bit, having to pay the mana to make the constructs, and being able to ramp a little bit first really offsets it in a powerful way. So my plan here, and I believe they mulled to 5 at the start of this game, my plan is to just Nevinyrral's Disc and use that to, and it looks like they're missing a land drop now, use that to clear the constructs that they're going to make here. And kill the Ornithopter, which, you know, is also a nice thing to do when they're stuck on lands. And we're going to kill whatever they search up with the Urza's Saga, which is a Zabaz. So they do hit me for a lot of damage here. Right now I'm going to take 4, and I'm at 16, but I'll play the Nevinyrral's Disc. Unfortunately, we draw the Gargadon this turn. It would have been great to suspend before we'd added to the board, but oh well. And the opponent has a Chrome Career, kind of a weird choice. Like it seems to me like, I mean, maybe they're just doing this so they can hit land drops, but like the career is just going to get wrathed away. They do get a couple extra damage out of it. Yeah, maybe it makes sense. I guess it depends what their hand is. But yeah, we get to just start this turn by blowing up all their stuff. Though we're now in like this super weird game, right? They started on a mold of 5, but now we're at 5 life against 20, and they actually have plenty of cards in hand, but almost no lands. So it's like, it's almost like the game is like at a regular mid game, except like we've traded like our life for their lands kind of situation, which is really odd. But they play a hard evidence here and just crack the thing immediately. We get in there with the Scophos Reaver, and I believe I just play another one. Or no, it looks like we're going to suspend the Gargadon and play a Monoscallion. Monoscallion can actually attack through the crab, because if they block, then you can just ping after damage. So that is a relevant body here. It seems like I'm not going to allow myself to ping, though. I'm just going to go ahead with this Arcbound Slasher. And this is a nice thing about playing the Monoscallion out before as well, because now if the Slasher dies, we do have something to put the counters on. Let's see if I decided to attack with the Monoscallion. Looks like I didn't, but I think it would have been better if I did, because it's not like the opponent's going to eat my Monoscallion with their Mishra's Factory, and if they choose to chump one of the 4-power creatures here, it means that Monoscallion would have gotten in for 2 damage, so they take the damage, which means that the Scallion attack wouldn't have accomplished much necessarily, but I still think I probably should have done that. They're going to reanimate a Landskeeper Kolos here. And then I think, yeah, it looks like my play is probably just going to be to 2-for-1 myself to kill this Kolos, noting that like if it's the Arcbound Slasher that dies, I get the counters on the Monoscallion, but I just send in the 2 4-power creatures, I think. The Kolos is going to have to block one of them. They're going to block the other with the Crab token, so maybe this was the time to send in the Monoscallion, who knows. But regardless, I get to finish off the Kolos with the Unholy Heat, play a second Scophos Reaver. Opponent's at 8, they do have a food. They're getting there on land drops, so now they have Disciple of the Sun, probably get back Chrome Career. Yeah. Actually, does that make sense? Yeah, it's graveyard to hand. Otherwise, maybe getting like Urza's Saga could have been appealing, but a little on the slow side for them, unfortunately. If it returned it to the battlefield, then they would get Chapter 1 right away, and then Chapter 2 next turn. Anyway, so now we're in this spot, facing down the Disciple of the Sun, and I think, yeah, there's like a funny attack I believe I get to make here with the Monoscallion, where if I just attack with the 3 creatures and they block the Disciple and the Monoscallion, I can remove a counter with the Scallion to have it ping itself, which then prevents the Disciple from gaining them life, so they take lethal. So it looks like that is the play that I went for. And they're going to trade off with the Scophos Reaver, which makes sense. So Scophos Reaver number 2 is down. And then I don't remember what I did, but it could have been very funny for me to just play out a 3rd, and that is what I did. Nice. So just the endless train of Scophos Reavers coming to get them here. They play out the Chrome Career, which doesn't gain them life this time and does get Mount Velis Manticore. And I believe the Gargadon comes down this turn. It does. And we draw a land, which is perfect to pitch to the Manticore. And I believe they're just incredibly dead here. We could go to combat, discard the land, kill the Chrome Career, and then we have a nice alpha. So maybe the Monoscallion could have gotten a little friskier that game, but ultimately a really nice kind of comeback for us on the back of that Nevinyrral's Disc against Urza's Saga. And a nice way of the opponent stabilizing from a mold of 5 too. Molds to 5 are not as punishing as they used to be in Magic, that's for sure. All right, so on to the next one. And it looks like this time the opponent gets the die roll. And we get this mono red hand, which is pretty reasonable. And oh yeah, we draw the the Nevinyrral's Disc. So before there's a little bit of tension in terms of, do I want to cast the Scophos Reaver on 3? Do I want to wait until turn 4 to cast Faithless Salvaging, and then I can Madness them both into play, which is really powerful and generates a lot of card advantage. But then once this happens with the opponent just casting some kind of strange non-creature spells, I feel like most people don't really play either of these cards. Now I'm really incentivized to wait and see if I can get there with a Nevinyrral's Disc, and now I get to sort of like flash in the Reaver after the disc, which looks pretty powerful to me, I think. So Arcbound Prototype is their find with the Imperial Recruiter, and we find an island, which is good. We were looking for one of those. No desire to wrath away my own Nevinyrral's Disc, and as long as they just add to the board a little bit here, I figure it's probably going to be worth it to get the disc going. I thought they would maybe do a little bit more than this. I'm not really sure, because now we're looking at maybe popping a Nevinyrral's Disc to kill a 1/1 and a 2/2 and get rid of a treasure and a lightning spear, which is not the worst, admittedly, but not the most exciting either. I do just jam the disc, though. It's time to use that, and that'll cost only 1 mana, which will give me plenty of mana for the salvaging into Scophos Reaver line. Opponent just goes for main phase lightning spear my face. There's just like never a reason to do this main phase. Like, it's just always better to wait, because it's not like when I activate the Nevinyrral's Disc it has split second or anything, which means you might end up not wanting to do that at all. They do have a couple mana up here which they might use on something else, but another line that they might have wanted to take is just equipping the lightning spear to deal me an extra damage. So here I'm thinking like, okay, one of the reasons I wanted to play the disc and activate it is to get rid of the lightning spear prior to getting a Scophos Reaver down, because the Scophos Reaver is actually bigger than their board, but lightning spear can trade with it. But now that we're in this spot, it seems like maybe just flashing in a 2/3, which is really not the intended mode of Scophos Reaver, at least not the way I see it. But yeah, it seems like perhaps just a 2/3 flash could be plenty powerful against an attacking Arcbound Prototype, and if something goes wrong, we do have the disc. So we get to salvaging the Reaver into play. And the opponent now goes for, let's see what it is here. Okay, looks like they're going for Foundry Helix, and they've done this in like a very strange way. They're targeting my face, and they've sacked their indestructible land. They could have just sacked their treasure. I'm not really sure what the deal is with this, but and now, okay, now it seems that we get to find out what they're up to, as they have Unholy Heat to kill the Scophos Reaver. But this is just like a super weird exchange that doesn't really make sense to me. So it seems like their goal is to just deal me 3 damage with this. This could go very wrong if they have, I think there's like an indestructible trick for 1 white mana that they are representing here, and if they have it, I could basically die. But it seems like it's high time to just pop the Nevinyrral's Disc, because if they're spending Foundry Helices like that, then maybe I'm just going to get burned out. But it seems like I'm not going to get burned out, which is nice, and so we get to rebound the Salvaging Madness, the other Scophos Reaver, which is nice, and then I believe it's just time for a Gouged Zealot. Yeah, it is. And so now suddenly we have 2 4/3s, and just a little bit like the previous game, we're down on life, but like really far ahead in terms of the board. Opponent cascades a Bloodbraid Marauder into Dragon's Rage Channeler. Looks like they had to go through pretty much their whole deck to find the DRC too. So it's good for me to know not too many cheap cards, and if I felt like it, I could look through their deck to kind of get a sense of what's in there. And then here, what do? They go for Kaleidoscorch, probably targeting my face given the way they're playing this. Yeah, and so they're just, it seems like they're kind of all in on trying to burn me out here. And it's funny, like the Gouged Zealot has reach, so we're not really in danger anyway. But now we're in this amazing spot where it might not really make sense that a mine can collapse on something that has flying, but just don't worry about that. So we now get to hard cast a Gargadon, and the Bloodbraid Marauder does get finished off by the Gouged Zealot as long as we can get to Delirium. Thing is, we already have creature, artifact, and instant in the graveyard, so just like, you know, casting Mine Collapse on this, hard casting it would not have gotten us to Delirium to finish this off. However, the alt casting cost, sacking a land, does. So we get to spend all of our mana on the Gargadon here, and then we cast a Mind Collapse for 0 mana. And we bonk them for 8. And this is just totally over. They play a Mount Velis Manticore, so I don't know. To their credit, they're still fighting. And then I think this... I don't... Or, oh yeah, maybe this is lethal. So it looks like we get to Mount Velis Manticore, pitch Monoskellion to it for lethal damage here, and just cast the other Mind Collapse as well to get rid of their blocker. And that'll do it. Yeah, it's 15 damage there. So very powerful stuff from us. A little confused by what the opponent was up to, but in the end, it like kind of made sense. It seemed like they were like pretty all in on trying to get to Delirium. But yeah, maybe just waiting a little bit on like the Lightning Spear and that kind of thing could have led to a different outcome for this game, or maybe not. I don't know. All right, now on to game 2 against the same opponents, for round 2 that is. And we get this hand. I think I might have kept this. This hand is pretty sketchy though. One landers on the draw are never ideal. We do have Monoskellion and Faithless Salvaging though, so we do have a little bit of action if we whiff, but I think most likely I mulliganed, and I did. Good. And let's see what I got rid of here. Maybe just a Mind Collapse. Yep, that's right. Because it can be a little bit slow and clunky. Sometimes you'll have the Mind Collapses that are super powerful, like we saw 2 in the previous game, but sometimes it's just 4 mana, kill a thing, or you don't have lands to sack or whatever. Opponent tapped their land into just pass, which is an old Magic Online Commander technique, which is funny. And they have Bloodbraid Marauder the way I imagine it normally looks, which is just 2 mana, 3/1, can't block, no other text. We get to suspend a Gargadon here on turn 2. And they have Steel Dromedary, so it looks like I'm going to be in trouble this game. They get to put counters on their Bloodbraid guy here, and we're taking a lot of damage. We do find the island, though, which is pretty critical for the Storm God's Oracle, which is just such a powerful blocker. Because, like, let's say, for instance, we play Scophos Reaver, and it's a 2/3 on their turn. They put another counter there with the Steel Dromedary, and suddenly there's a 5/3 that I don't have a profitable block against, and I'm just taking a crap ton of damage against a deck that's trying to burn me out, which sounds terrible. Here they have Gouged Zealot. Looks like they're going to put the counter on the Bloodbraid again, and I think I just am totally fine with this 1-for-1 trade against the Bloodbraid, and we draw a land. And I think here it's just time for Hardcast Mind Collapse on Gouged Zealot. Nice mana efficient play. And again, Scophos Reavers, despite how they looked in game 1, normally not the best blockers in the world. Now the opponent has a Fairgrounds Patrol. I think they mulliganed here as well, maybe to 6 this game, but they're almost out of cards regardless. Getting in with the Dromedary, which has been pretty nice for them. And we find another Gargadon, so I think it's time to, cast a Scophos Reaver, suspend Gargadon number 2, and I believe the other Gargadon, the first one, is about to come off suspend pretty soon. Now they have Strike It Rich, which isn't doing a whole lot. They make this attack, and I don't think there's like nothing in their graveyard. I'm trying to remember what I was putting them on, because I thought they had some kind of combat trick, but I don't remember which one I was thinking about. I think regardless, I went for the block, probably against the Dromedary, because the other one has value from the graveyard, so I figure, like, if it's something else. Okay, so we do kind of get punished here, because they have this Reinforce 1 thing, and if we blocked the 2/1, then that would have traded, and then they make the Thopter, but at the same time, it's not a big problem, as the Gargadon does block both of these anyway. But Gargadons aren't really for blocking. You don't really want to have your 7/5 Trample Haste also have Defender. So we're going to cast the Scophos Reaver, which does still have a good block against the Fairgrounds guy. And I think we just, crunch in there for 7 and say, like, sure, you're an aggressive Boros deck. Sure, we're at 12 life, but, like, we're hitting you for chunks of 7. So can you really survive against that? Oh, and the funny thing here, too, is the Dromedary isn't able to untap as soon as they reinforce onto it. So there's randomly that bit of upside for us. And then now we're looking at making that Scophos Reaver trade that we were kind of talking about before. So they play Extruder here, which is pretty scary. Like, this card can do very powerful things. They put the counter on the Fairgrounds Warden. I think I might have taken the damage. I don't remember. Yeah. So I do take the damage down to 9. One of the nice things about them playing Extruder first is we don't have to guess what they have in hand because they're Hellbent. And here we draw yet another Scophos Reaver. And I'm trying to think about whether or not I can kill them, whether or not I die on the Crackback if I attack with both and they don't block. I think I did decide to attack with both. No, just the 7/5. And then I think after they take the damage, I was like almost certain that they couldn't kill me. I think I was pretty surprised that they took the damage. Because I think I was kind of expecting them to like sack the treasure and then have a 5/4 to trade with the Gargadon. But I guess that's a game they're losing most likely, so maybe they're just trying to top deck something that gets them out of this. Not really sure what the plan is for them, but once again, they kindly show me that they have no action here by playing out that land. I think here, yeah, this time, once again, I do just take the damage, and I'm pretty sure that they can't survive this, even with some kind of trickery involving the Extruder here. And so I think I just get to send in everybody, and they go for a block on one of the Scophos Reavers and a block on the Gargadon. But this has me trampling over for more than enough damage. Right now the Scophos Reaver that's unblocked is going to hit them for 4, and then we have currently 4 points of trample damage on the Gargadon, but even if they sack the Dromedary and the treasure, they still take exact lethal here. So looks like that's what's going to happen, and they're going to lose. So on to the finals now. All right, and we do get to play first in the finals, and we have this hand, which has a nice number of Scophos Reavers and a Monoscallion to start off the party, except once we top deck the Gargadon on turn 2, we're just going to suspend that instead of going for the Scophos Reaver plan. We do pretty much always want to get the Gargadon online as soon as possible. Here I decide I'm going to take a somewhat conservative line and go for the Monoscallion ping on the Cabal Initiate, thinking that, if Cabal Initiate is going to enable them to do a bunch of powerful madness things, then maybe it's worth it to get it off the battlefield. But like, this isn't Vintage Cube. Most likely they're not going to reanimate Archon or whatever next turn, even though technically it might be possible. Not sure about doing that on turn 3, but I think, yeah, it was a little bit more conservative than I needed to be, as opposed to just like playing out a Scophos Reaver. But they do go for a Faithless Salvaging here into the Kitchen Imp. So we've got our 2-for-1 with the Monoscallion killing the Cabal Initiate, but now they're going to get their sort of 2-for-1 with this Kitchen Imp. But actually it's a bit better than that because of the Faithless Salvaging. So now I suck it up and decide I have to play Scophos Reaver. A little bit unfortunate for me to miss a land drop, but pretty much all my cards cost 3 anyway. Most of them do, that is. And so they get in there with the Kitchen Imps, and I hope to draw a land because Gouged Zealot has reach, and we do draw a land. And the one thing we don't want to do here is trade the Scophos Reaver, or really trade anything for that matter, for this Master of Death, because, yeah, that's just not a trade you ever really want to make. Okay, and so they just pass, which kind of gives me the indication that I'm in the all clear, but like Grixis I do think is probably the best deck in the format. Grixis Madness is probably a little bit worse because Madness usually gets its strength from being like a streamlined aggressive deck. So I was kind of thinking like, okay, if they just like play a removal on Gouged Zealot, I probably lose, but as soon as we manage to untap with the Gouged Zealot here, we're in pretty good shape comparatively. And now we get to resolve a Gargadon, which is always a great time. And here's a pretty big one for us. We find the Mount Velis Manticore, and the reason this is so exciting is because it's going to allow us to kill Master of Death without spending mana to do it. It's one thing to, trade like your onboard Scophos Reaver for the Master of Death. Like, that's already a terrible exchange. But imagine playing a Mount Velis Manticore here and just pitching like a Scophos Reaver from hand to kill the Master of Death. Like, sure, we're, going down on cards to do this, but in the meantime, we're once again in one of those spots where we have 15 power in play. So it's pretty appealing to just get rid of a card from hand to remove Master of Death as a blocker, force them to spend mana and life to put it back into play next turn. They do have Mind Collapse, unfortunately, on the Gargadon, which is pretty much the worst thing they could have. But they still end up trading 2 Imps for the 1 Gouged Zealot, which is pretty important for me here, and we hit them to 16. They, of course, get the Master of Death back and replay it. And they play a Viashino Lashclaw. It's funny, between passing the Master of Death and passing the Svelune, it kind of feels like in this draft we sort of had to prove that the rares that we passed were, in fact, beatable. Here, looks like my plan is just to Madness the Scophos Reaver, which makes a lot of sense after drawing that land. So we'll go to combat, shoot down the Master of Death once again, and this is way, way better. Like, even last turn, it was a pretty good exchange to kill the Master of Death without, getting rid of something that we spent mana on. But this time, we get to do it without even losing a card. In fact, we're like discounting our Scophos Reaver, so this is a pretty sick turn of events for us, and we bonk them for 7 there. Now they're at 8, and going down to 7 with the Master of Death once again, which is just not really a plan that looks very good in their spot, because we do get to use the Mount Velis Manticore again once we draw another card here. But it looks like they probably just didn't have any better options, and so we draw an inconsequential land that is Manticore fodder, and they scoop it up. And we go to another game against this opponent. And we'll see how it goes. And we have this hand, which has a combination of cards that I alluded to before. When you're setting up for a Nevinyrral's Disc, it's really nice if you're able to suspend a Gargadon beforehand, because then, 1, you're promising Gargadon coming down relatively soon, but 2, you're actually spending your mana. You're doing something that matters, and something that's a lot less suspicious than just passing without doing anything. So here I just cracked the Scalding Tarn right away, and I'm a little bit terrified that they're going to beat me down before I can get the whole Nevinyrral's Disc into Gargadon plan online. But then we find Gargadon number 2, which doesn't actually help us in that regard, but means that if we do live until after the disc, we're just going to have some real fireworks. So the opponent is going to Madness out a Kitchen Imp, which is very scary for us, but then the good news is they tap their Guiltblade Prowler to draw a card and lose a life. It's so much scarier for us if they use that to get in 2 extra damage, but of course they don't know that the Nevinyrral's Disc is on the way. That said, again, this kind of just goes to what I was talking about with Madness in Rakdos versus Grixis in general. Like, in Rakdos, the goal is really just to deal like as much damage to the opponent as possible, as quickly as possible, which makes a lot of sense. And so, like, tapping and activating this, and to a lesser extent even like playing this card, maybe just not the best like fit for Rakdos, which is kind of the traditional Madness thing, as opposed to Grixis. All right, so we get to resolve the disc, and they have 4 creatures in play. And they go ahead and basically rummage away a Mistvault Bridge, and they're going to bonk me for 6. Another instance where if they had just hit me for 2 extra damage, sure, maybe they'd be out of resources more or less, but like, it's so much scarier for me to be in 3 life at this spot as opposed to 7. And so funny thing here is actually, if the Gargadon was coming off suspend this turn, we did suspend the one on turn 2 and the other on turn 3, but still the first one will come off suspend next turn, turn 6. We'd actually be able to crack this before the thing is on the battlefield, whether that means on upkeep in response to the suspend trigger, or in response to, like, we could hold priority and cast this thing from the suspend and then crack this, but instead we don't even have to worry about responding or not blowing up our own Gargadon. We just do this, goodbye go their 4 creatures, and then here I think we just play out a Batterbone and a Monoskellion. And we're just in this spot, and the opponent is not even gonna let me do the thing with the Gargadons. But yeah, that was that was quite the draft. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with this blue-red deck, and we went through a lot of kind of twists and turns during the drafting portion, not knowing what I was going to do. Originally thinking I was going to play Teamer for probably too long. I think I should have jumped ship on that a little sooner. And then toward the end, contemplating maybe some Jeskai, but didn't get there on the mana fixing and didn't think the Ornithopters looked like a good enough fit for the deck. And instead we just kind of got to show off some of the power of the red commons in the format. Scophos Reaver, Mind Collapse, and Gargadon, all just all-stars in this deck. The colorless cards performed very well. Didn't really get to see the Storm God's Oracles pop off this time, but we did get to see Yusri do some crazy things. So yeah, with that all said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this draft video. Unfortunately, I will mostly be making them through my Twitch VODs as opposed to recording them like this, but still kind of a special one for me to dedicate some time to doing this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.